those of you who, and thank you for starting the recording as usual. We will be recording this. So for those of you who may not remember or I haven't met, I'm Rosa Miami, Director of Engagement and Membership. So it's great to see you. And we've got a couple of interesting sessions for you. So why don't we look at the agenda real quick. So opening, we're also going to have Matt Giampala talk to us about journals and transition to open access, and Lauren Parr is here with us as well, who oversees meetings and learning. She's going to give us some updates on fall meeting planning and some of the discussion that you all may have seen recently, and also we'll do open mic. Let me do a couple of quick updates that aren't on the agenda. On behalf of Cheryl Enderline, who you all know in our government's team, elections open September 7th. They go through October 6th, allowing the 30 days to vote. Cheryl asked that I remind you all as section leaders to promote the election to your section members. You should have some content and wording messaging from her on that, but if you don't, go to www.agu, I guess no one does that anymore, the www, but I've got it here. .agu.org/elections, and maybe Greg or Hannah want to stick that into the chat, where folks can go vote, but also there's some language there in case you want to send people there or send something through AGU Connect. The other update I have for you guys is on Monday, the Biogeosciences section, their DEI team is hosting a webinar about demystifying the nomination preparation process for honors. Latoya Miles, chair of the Honors and Recognition Committee, will be there. I'll actually be one of the speakers as well. And we're going to give you a link that I think is there. Yep, register, that Hannah has put in there. It is on Monday afternoon, at least Eastern time. And I'm forgetting what time it is, Hannah. Can you remind me?
Yep, it is from 2:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, August 29th.
Great, thank you. So, feel free, it's open to anyone. So go ahead and register for that or send that around to people who might find it interesting. So those are the couple of updates I have. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Matt and we can start his slides. So, Matt, we're ready for you when you are.
I think it's Bill.
Hi, everyone. Good to talk to you all again. This is a follow-up to the leadership call last month, where we went over some of these items, and there were lots of questions, particularly about the transition to open access. So I figured I'd come and give you an abridged presentation. We also had a webinar on open science, so a lot of these slides are from that. I'll skip through some of the slides, but welcome any of your questions along the way or after. And I will do my best to monitor the chat as we go. So just an overview, AGU publications reminder, we're up to 23 peer-reviewed journals now. 9 of those are fully open access, which means that everything in the journal publishes immediately open. 14 of them are considered hybrid, which means they're subscription journals, but they have options for publishing open access. It takes a lot of people. We have a lot of volunteers that make our journals program work, so that we have more than 800 editors and associate editors. And that's because we get more than 17,000 submissions a year, and we publish around 8,000 published articles each year. We also have a books program, which we're exploring and expanding open access options there as well. And all the work that I'm going to talk about today with expanding open access is really being overseen by the Publications Committee and the AGU board. Next. So this is all in the context of AGU support for open science and open research. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And the point of open science is really that we're all trying to tackle the world's problems together, and we need more access and more people to be involved in solving the world's problems. So open science is really intended to accelerate that pace of science, increase the impact to communities and individuals on our planet, expand the direct applications of science, and to share knowledge so it's not hidden away. So that includes making things accessible, ensuring reproducibility and that people can build on previous work, and ensuring inclusivity in participation and in consuming the products of science. Next slide. I will be mostly talking about open access, but want to emphasize it's not just about open access to research articles. That's a big part of it, but it includes the software and data behind research, open practices, including transparency and peer review and communications around science, conflicts of interest and things like that. Collaboration, ensuring collaboration that others can build on each other's work. And then recognition and reward of what people are doing to support science. Next slide. So as we think about how we can expand open science, we kept 3 goals in mind within the publications department. And that is, yes, what can we do to embrace open science, which I just spoke about some of those items, but we also want to keep inclusivity and sustainability in mind. So on the inclusivity side, we really want to expand globally our participation. We want to have authors, editors, and reviewers from all over the world. We want to make sure that we're being inclusive in terms of gender and race and ethnicity as well. And we want to reduce funding barriers. And then on the sustainability side, obviously, we want to continue to have funding to sustain our operations. And we want to make sure that the work that's being done by our volunteers is really being valued and supported. Thanks. So on open access progress, I just wanted to show you the trend over the past few years. If you look at all of our published articles across all of our journals, you can see we've been growing the proportion of it that's immediate open access over the past few years. And in particular, the past 2, we've seen a real acceleration. So last year, we're over 41% of our articles were immediately open access. And this year, we're trending actually about 51% through the first half of this year of our articles were published immediate open access. Next slide. I'll go into a little bit more about Creative Commons licenses later, I think. So progress that we've made. So I think I'll explain later about what difference between green and gold open access. But on the green open access side, we've really just expanded how we open the material, the subscription material, to as many people as possible. So you all know that everybody at AGU, everybody who's a member at AGU gets access to our journals as part of their membership now. And then with our green open access components, everything that's published in AGU, if it's in a subscription article, published as a subscription article, that's opened after 24 months. We also allow for self-archiving. So you can deposit a version of your article, the final version of your article, the PDF, within 6 months embargo on your personal website or an institutional repository. And we allow preprints immediately before and after publication of the article. So that's we allow even the final accepted article before typesetting to be saved as a preprint. So that's all considered green open access. It's allowing for access to a version of the article that may be behind a paywall, but we can get these other ways for access. And then on the gold immediate open access side, we obviously have been transitioning journals. So you'll be aware we already did Space Weather and G Cubed recently, and we've announced GRL, and I'll talk about that more. And then we're doing more to ensure that we can expand our waivers for those who don't have funding to pay those open access fees. Next slide. So the big announcement that came a month or so ago, just a couple of months ago, is that as of January 1st next year, GRL will be open access. That means all the previously published papers will be opened, and any new papers will be published with his Creative Commons licenses, and they'll be immediately open. This does come with a new article publication charge that is now mandatory for everyone in that journal to pay or to request a waiver and have that fee waived. And the charge is $2,900, which I know some people get sticker shock on. And I'm going to go into all the ways that people may pay for this, and again, the waiver program at the end. Next slide. So I should have put this slide earlier, but just to emphasize again the difference between green and gold, when you're archiving or making a preprint available, that's considered green open access, and there's not a presumption of there being a specialized license, and there's usually no fee for that way of doing things. On the gold open access side, there's usually a fee for publishing, and there's one of the things you get for that is a special license called a Creative Commons license, which leaves the copyright with the author typically, but it also sets forth stipulations that allows everyone to access and reuse the material in certain ways without going and directly asking for permission. So that's one of the reasons why the gold open access is kind of considered the gold standard for open access, that you've got these built-in ways of getting permissions so people can build on the work that's been done. And here we have, I just wanted to emphasize that there's globally different landscapes for requirements around open access. So you can see that you can see in China, there's green open access policies. The US is kind of a mix between green and gold open access. Much of Europe has requirements for gold open access and funding to support gold open access. And in the United States, we've got a little bit of a mix there with whether there's funding or not, with coming with the mandates with these policies requiring open access in various methods. Next slide. So the role of publishers in this, I won't read the whole slide, is really to support the requirements coming from the various funding agencies and the institutions where authors are working. So we need to be able to meet the needs of our authors to publish in the ways that they need to. And we've, like I said, we've got a bunch of ways that we've been doing that. Next slide. Let me know if there's any urgent questions in the chat here too. To emphasize the preprint side, we started the Earth and Space Science Open Archive, which allows people to post a preprint of their paper or that accepted author version of the paper. And they can do that with a Creative Commons license at the preprint. So that's another way you can get a Creative Commons license for the work while still publishing in a subscription journal without paying for that open access. Next slide. To emphasize, there are some advantages for the authors to publishing open access. It's documented their increased usage, readership, and downloads of the articles. There are increases in citations because more people have access to read and then cite the papers. And there's more altmetrics kind of measures social media and news coverage. There's definitely higher media attention to the open articles. Next slide. So our fully open access journals, this just lists out all the AG journals and which ones are fully open access. So you see AG Advances, Community Science, our new journal, Earth and Space Science. We've been starting and converting journals to this. And then our hybrid journals are all listed there. So the JGRs are all still hybrid journals. GRL is currently hybrid until the end of the year. And we'll talk about the different routes for funding for those two options. Next slide. I already went into the Creative Commons licenses, but the most common is the CC BY license, which allows for reuse of the material. It could be commercial reuse. It could be reused where somebody takes and makes a translation or anything like that, as long as people give attribution to the original work. People can also opt for the NC or ND components of the license, which will then restrict commercial reuse or restrict derivative works like a translation. Next slide. So here's the various routes of for funding. So there are institutional funder accounts that could include discounts or directly paying. There are countries that are designated as automatic waiver countries. There's options for you to pay through your grant, which is what most people will think of when they think of having to pay an APC. And then AGU provides for waivers. Next slide. So for institutional funding, the biggest one that's growing right now are these considered transitional or transformational agreements. They're sometimes called read and publish agreements. This is where an institution, typically the library leads the charge at the institution, is making deals for when they renew subscriptions to say, well, we don't want to just get subscriptions covered now. We want everyone at our institution to have open access covered. And the idea, what makes them transformational, is that funding should over time transition from covering subscriptions to covering paying for open access. So, so you start out here, this is the amount we're paying for subscriptions, this is the amount we're paying for open access, and they should trade over time. Subscriptions go away, all the journals are open access, and the library is, and the institution is only covering the OA fees at that point. Currently, we're in transitional period, so many of these arrangements may cover only publication, open access publication in subscription hybrid journals. Some of them also cover or only cover publication in the fully open access journals. So right now there is a really kind of complex landscape, and authors sometimes don't know what does my institution cover. So we're going to provide resources. We're going to help people figure that out, especially when you have a group of authors from multiple institutions. Help them figure out where the funding is for them for that particular journal. Next slide. And just to emphasize that these agreements are expanding all the time. So right now there are 18 of these sort of transformational agreements in the US. There's 17 agreements covering Europe, and many of those are countrywide agreements. So all of those agreements are covering the hybrid subscription journals, and 13 of them cover the fully gold open journals as well. Next slide. So this will be back on the waivers aspect, and the automatic waivers that people are eligible for if they're in any of the countries on this map, highlighted on this map here. So depending on the World Health Organization helps compile this list, and the Research for Life program actually provides subscription access to these countries, but then we build on that and say we'll also give you open access for authors from these countries. So you can see through that much of Africa and some of South America is covered. Ukraine is covered under this. And we're really happy that these authors are even being identified. Even if they're not raising their hand and saying, I need a waiver, they're identified as getting the waiver. Next slide. So then between those two, we see all the coverage that people already have. Much of the US, much of Africa, South America, Europe, and Asia are covered by either the Research for Life program or a transformative agreement. So, and we're really excited that this is building all the time. So you can see there are places, people in China are just pretty much paying because they have good funding, but they don't have a transformative agreement in place. India is one where we know that it's really in need of an agreement that covers the entire country, because that's a place where we're getting people asking for waivers, and we're giving them, but those waivers aren't just automatic as part of the Research for Life program. Next slide. So the United States, here's the landscape of where we have really broad coverage. We obviously want this to grow, and I do have news as of yesterday that the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy has just now mandated that by 2025, all of the funding agencies will have a plan for making all papers immediately open. And that doesn't stipulate whether it's green or gold open access, but if that many more papers are going to be open access, we'll see that our subscriptions are going to be decreasing, and we're going to have to make more of our journals fully open access. So we're going to see an even further acceleration of the transition to open access. Next slide. This is, let me familiarize myself with this slide here. This is just, we kind of went over this before. These are the hybrid journals and how things work in the hybrid journals. They have a base publication fee. We don't do waivers for the open access fee in the hybrid journals because it is really an optional thing. But we are seeing that that most people are covered through the transformative agreements here. When they choose the open access, it's because they have funding for it. Next slide. And then with the fully open access journals, we ask authors to kind of go through this, and we'll help them through if they're having trouble identifying whether they're covered by an institutional or a funder payment, or are they covered under this Research for Life program. And if they're not, and they're not able to pay, then we'll make available funds from AGU. So I'm sure you have questions on waivers and all of that. Hopefully I wasn't too fast or too confusing in my presentation.
Thanks, Matt. That was great. I don't see anything in the chat, but if anyone wants to add something to the chat or raise your hand, I'm sure Matt will take questions. Anyone? No, I don't think I see anything. So with that, you know where to get us. Certainly, we can follow up with you if you've got follow-up questions later. So thanks, Matt, for your time. Appreciate
I'll
it.
link to a couple items in the chat too, because you could share our resource pages with your sections in case people are worried about how they're going to get funding to publish in.
Yeah, great. And we do have a question actually. Are the fees likely to increase over time rapidly?
So no, so GRL did have an increase when we transitioned it because it actually had a pretty low by our standards open access fee, but most of the journals as we transition them, the hybrid journal fee is priced a little higher than we'll probably land when we transition to required open access. I'm not anticipating that we're going to be definitely not rapidly, but that will be raising the prices significantly. We obviously will always be looking as to what our staffing needs are. We have 24 staff just in the publications department, and we have our sort of more centralized services across AGU, marketing department, our finance department, our payroll, all of those things. Those don't even go to our budget line. So we do want to make sure we have enough revenue to be sustainable. That's what I talk about, what I mean when I'm talking about being sustainable. And we pay our editors and editors-in-chief, and we'd like to be able to continue to do that and even increase the amount we can give to our editors because they're doing so much work for us.
Okay, thanks for that. All right. So why don't we move to the next topic? Thanks, Matt. So Lauren is here to talk to us about what's going on with the fall meeting. Hey, Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on a Friday. So we're going to go through a couple of things that are really related to fall meeting in Chicago this year, and then transition to some things that I want to share with you about what's going on as far as future locations for meetings. So happy to talk about both of those things today. So just to kind of bring all of you up to speed, we do have a really robust series of plenary lectures this year. And we are thrilled to welcome on the first day of the meeting, Dilla Thomas, who is going to be part of our presidential forum lecture. There may be another lecturer added, TBD. We have some really nice invitations out. We'll see if anyone takes us up on that. But Dilla is really an interesting guy. He's known as Chicago's TikTok historian, and he started this TikTok channel to kind of teach his kids about the history of the city. And he's done a couple of really great presentations. He gave a talk at Society for Scholarly Publishing, and people just raved about him. He's very connected to the Chicago art community. He is just passionate about Chicago's leadership in the world. And he's got a really interesting career in that he's in all of these amazing buildings. He actually does kind of elevator installation and maintenance. He has since the beginning of his career. His dad was a Chicago police officer. And so he's got this kind of front row seat to all of this kind of cool history when they're renovating these buildings, and he's going in and kind of seeing the behind the scenes. So he's also extremely passionate about opportunities for Chicago kids. And we don't mean Chicago kids maybe from like the nice neighborhoods, we mean Chicago kids everywhere. And so he is passionate about making sure that kids who are underrepresented, who are from neighborhoods that might not be as well supported or well funded, have the same opportunities, especially in STEM. So really fantastic guy. We're excited for him. I encourage you, if you TikTok, to check out his channel. And if you don't TikTok, talk to your students in early careers, because they do. So on Tuesday, although we may move that also to later in the week, Carlos Nobre has been honored with the Frontiers Lecture for this year. We are thrilled to have him, just a really terrific guy. He is going to come and talk to us again about global warming and the deforestation of the Amazon, and why anyone should care about that, basically, why we should all care about that. He does a tremendous amount of work with indigenous populations there, and is going to kind of really push on that theme in terms of all of us being able to participate in the solutions and the understanding of our planet. We have invitations out on Wednesday for Jalone Newsome, who many of you will remember. She was a board member. She did step down when she got a great gig at the White House. She's the Senior Director for Environmental Justice at the White House, and we are very much hoping that she will come to the meeting. We also have an invitation out to Deb Haaland. We'll see, where kind of the agency lectures tend to come in very last because of schedules and things like that. And then on Thursday, Dr. Mika Tosca is convening an art and science plenary, and we are so thrilled about this. And we're looking at 4 transdisciplinary Chicago-based artists who can speak to how their art can inspire the larger questions in our society, like climate change and science communications. So they're putting that together, and that comes directly from the Science and Society section. That is a subgroup that we're working with there, and they've been phenomenal to work with. And then lastly, on Friday, Alexander Zlay is going to present his closing plenary on open science. And part of that is to kick off NASA's Year of Open Science, but also AGU's 2023 theme, which will be around and oriented around open science as well. Dr. Zlay is a Bloomberg Distinguished Professor, and he's a professor of computer science at Johns Hopkins. He's also the director of the Institute for Data Intensive Science, and he is just a really terrific speaker. So we're thrilled to have him as well. Next slide. So we have some very cool innovations. We have many innovations this year, and remember, those are kind of the open sessions. You can do all kinds of things in these sessions. It doesn't have to be I got more than 20 abstracts, so I get orals type of thing. It can really be room for creative space. And Lucy Jones is doing something around climate and music. We will have an orchestra. One of the more unusual requests I've had for sourcing, but she's fantastic, and a choir, and they're doing kind of music and a science talk, and music and a science talk. She's really phenomenal. So Year of Open Science, also plenary announcement, is the Great Debate Session. And the Great Debate Session is going to follow on. EGU and JPGU are involved in that, and that's going to follow our Open Science Plenary on Friday. And Dominique, to your question, Carlos is actually based in Brazil. And Alex is based now at Johns Hopkins, but I believe he's from Europe originally. So I believe he's Hungarian. Don't hold me to that, but I believe he's Hungarian. And Dilla is based in Chicago, but we also, we have a few more invitations out. So we will update you on those, but thank you for the question. And next slide. So fall meeting program committee, it's that time. We're getting ready to meet actually December 7th to 9th, September 7th to the 9th. And that's the meeting where we schedule all the sessions. We're really asking that all of you check in with your representatives on that committee and make sure that you are kind of hearing about any concerns, any themes, any discussions that we would that you should be aware of. Please make sure that your reps are supported enough. We do have a couple of sections that we're working with because folks are going to be on field work and not able to attend the scheduling meeting. So we really want people to be there primarily in person, but there are a few people attending virtually still as well, and that's totally okay. But somebody has to be there at some point. So please check in. Make sure your reps are in really good shape. We're still waiting on a few named lecturers, so we're reaching out and working with our honors team on that as well. And if you're feeling like you don't have enough information, you can always email me personally. A couple of things that actually have come up over the past 24, 48 hours that I want to just kind of make sure that are in front of you. Every year, we start to see kind of predatory housing folks, right? You get an email from someone that says, hey, we're AGU and we're ready to take your housing reservations. Can you make your reservations? And they offer you a way to do that. And those are housing pirates. We call them pirates. And they are not part of AGU. So AGU has an official housing company, and that's Merits. And we do have a statement about this on the website. And you can register and book your housing at the same time. But if you're getting, and they're getting really good at this, right? So they'll get an email address that says aguoffice.org or something like that, because they're trying to impersonate AGU. So we're managing that through actually web hosting companies where we've reached out with cease and desist. But just wanted all of you to be aware that if there is confusion, we certainly don't want that. And we're going to be really proactive about making sure everyone has the correct information. The other thing that's come up is there's some chatter on Twitter about changing presentations. And just a note that when people submitted their abstracts, we did ask that they designate whether they were coming in person or virtual. In the case of oral presenters, once those oral talks are allocated, there is an opportunity for oral talks to be given in person or virtually. We will always preserve the right for our oral presenters to present virtually. And you don't need to pre-record your information this year. Posters are harder to change, right? So this is why we asked for people to declare that in advance. I understand that thinking about it 6 months in advance is difficult, but that is what we ask folks to do. On the poster side, it's very hard for us to say, oh, you will have a virtual poster, but now you want to present in person. I don't really have a pop-up board I can do on site. So we're really asking that if you have declared that and you're awarded a poster talk, even if you switch how you attend the meeting, that you are still going to hold that presentation as either virtual or in person, what you asked for, requested when you submitted your abstract. So there's information on the website, more information to come, but just wanted to be really clear about that. And again, hard to answer those questions until we know who's granted orals and who's granted posters. So working through that right now. Next, oh, thank you, perfect. So we just wanted to give you a quick heads up on some numbers, and we are excited about this. We had about 18,500 unique individuals who submitted abstracts, which is really terrific. We do have, remember last year we were kind of 2/3 virtual and 1/3 in person, and this year you're seeing that in-person component kind of really start to come back. But we again are preserving that online experience. The virtual experience is something that we want to improve upon from last year, and then certainly something that we want to continue. And then here's some information, kind of top countries, which is very interesting. Remember that India is part of that tier 1, tier 2 countries where they receive a $0 abstract fee, and then also a $0 registration, whether they come in person or virtually. So we're very encouraged by these numbers, happy to see these student submissions, and absolutely happy to see folks coming back and committing to seeing us in Chicago. Next slide. I know you've seen this slide before. I am going to just plug it again, though. There is a ton of information on the website. We think it is much better organized this year than it has been. We had a lot of folks who worked really hard on it. Please take a look at it. If you can't find something or feel like something's missing, just reach out to us. We're always happy to have your feedback on that. Next slide. So I'm going to pause here really quickly and see if there's, before we go into this discussion, if there's anything that I can, oh, and Janet asked, do you have a breakdown of US versus international online and in-person? I don't have online and in-person submission yet, but I can certainly, I can certainly pull those numbers together for you. Andy, you have asked about a mask policy. Right now, we are requiring our vaccines again. We are requiring that vaccinations be up to date, and that does mean boosted. We also are granting some grace for countries. For example, India India has very specific vaccines that they're given and they're used in their population. They aren't necessarily recognized as an approved vaccine by the CDC in our country, but certainly we are not going to bar anybody from India from participating if they are fully vaccinated according to their own country's rules and regulations. As for masks, right now, we are strongly encouraged for masks, and we reserve the right to make that mandatory. And the reason that it's not mandatory yet is that we are really looking at kind of what the fall vaccinations kind of render in terms of, increased, because the new vaccines that are coming out basically do have the Omicron variant included in them in the US, and we felt like it was really early to say mandatory masks, but strongly encouraged is where we are. We did look at a number of other societies who are hosting meetings right now, and they are also strongly encouraged. So again, a little bit early to make the call on mandatory masks, but nothing that would prevent anyone from wearing a mask. We will still provide masks, and we will strongly encourage them for now. And feel, we'll make a decision closer based on kind of what's going on in terms of illness rates. And sorry, let me just pull up the chat so I can see that too. Oh, virtual posters and how virtual posters will happen. We actually are getting ready, Sebastian, to post a graphic for what that experience is going to look like. So they're working on some information right now to kind of talk about the virtual experience overall versus the in-person experience and how they're blended. So more to come on that too. COVID testing, we will put, so Kimberly, we haven't decided about negative tests right now. I don't believe we are going to require a negative test, but again, that can change based on, kind of based on what we're seeing as we get closer. We have for those returning to their own countries too. We will have a site nearby. There are several sites that are just outside of the convention center where people can go and get those tests that they need to return home. And right now, it doesn't look like tests are actually required to go in and out of country, except for on very rare occasions. But we know that a lot of folks are still going to want to test before they go home. Great. So more to come. I know it's August, almost September, but we're really following all of this very closely and working with the Chicago Department of Public Health, and certainly looking at travel requirements and potential potential testing requirements with USTAA and all of those things. So kind of watching that right now. Great. So fall meeting location, whoops. John, I don't have an answer to this right now in terms of kind of new models for the fall meeting and geographically distributing it. I can certainly take your comment back to the meetings committee, but I don't have an answer for that.
Thanks.
So for fall meeting location discussions, I just wanted to, this will be actually a council agenda item in just a couple of weeks, but also wanted to bring all of you up to speed on some things that have happened. So much of the discussion is related to the SCOTUS decision to reverse Roe v. Wade and also Dobbs, and kind of how that plays out across all of the states. And actually, AGU has members in every state, and we have business booked in quite a few states, and including states that are now trying to legislate this in their own state systems. So there was an AGU Connect post. There was a letter to AGU written by Claire Kuba, a very thoughtful letter. She sent that, and people began to sign on to that. AGU did post in AGU Connect that we were kind of taking a look at that. We were looking at all of our options and kind of talking about it, and that we would be transparent about the information that we collected and kind of how those conversations were taking place. PCMA is basically one of my professional societies. It's the Professional Meetings and Convention Planners. That includes hotels, that includes cities, that includes convention centers, and associations around the world. And immediately when all of this happened, when the decisions were announced, and we started to see trigger bans right away, we started to make some calls. We had some conversations with the city of New Orleans. We had some conversations with Dallas, Texas, and other states. And we started to say, okay, what are you seeing? What's going on? But we also started to talk to many other associations who were in the same position that AGU is in, with business on the books, so to speak. And we started to say kind of, what are you doing? How are you considering this? And what does this mean for the future of events around the world, and certainly in our country? So on August 8th, the AGU actually convened a discussion forum with PCMA at AGU's headquarters. And it was fascinating, and actually it is going to be published as an article in Convene magazine. So as soon as that is published, we will send that out to all of you. And the cities that were there included Washington, D.C., Nashville, Tennessee, Indianapolis, and others. And then we also had associations from everything from kind of medical to science to that was kind of representing really our industry. The group that was not really represented at this forum were the hotels, although that is likely to come soon in the next iteration of these conversations. And the interesting thing is to kind of hear how everyone is processing this and how everyone is managing this with their own communities. Some folks have made decisions to cancel. For example, the fetal and maternal medicine folks, they were there with us and talked with us, and they had a meeting scheduled in Louisiana. It goes absolutely against the mission of their organization. So they the abortion ban and the resulting restrictions go against the mission of their organization. So they did make the decision to leave New Orleans. There are other societies that have said they're going to stay, but they're also going to try to support and amplify messages while they're there to support pregnant persons and to support the health of pregnant persons and women's health. So there are a lot of conversations. The biggest thing though right now is that we are a couple of months into this decision and there are no clear answers. We have 29 states that are kind of working their way through these processes. And so everyone is kind of in this holding pattern, and it's changing very much day to day. Certainly if you're following the news in Louisiana, you may have read that the state of Louisiana is withholding flood aid now for the city of New Orleans because they have said that they won't enforce restrictive abortion bans. So you're seeing this play out. We have a little bit of time because certainly AGU is not heading there right away, but we also want to make sure that if we're making decisions with the understanding of what is going to happen in those states. And so working with those states directly, having conversations with them quite a bit and trying to navigate that. And then also the other thing that we're doing is we did post a survey on AGU Connect, and I highly, highly encourage you to fill it out. The meetings committee worked with us to develop a survey. We've got that in AGU Connect, and we are actually taking all of that feedback. The meetings committee has looked at the first round of feedback, and we're still leaving that survey open so that the AGU community can participate and have their information there. And yes, Andy, as soon as I'm done here, I will drop a link. As soon as I'm done talking, I can't paste and talk at the same time. I apologize. And we are going to be transparent about that feedback and talk to the council about that at our meeting very shortly, and then also talk with the board about that. So those conversations are ongoing. I'll also share with you that Nature magazine reached out and they did interview Claire, who wrote the original letter, and they also interviewed me as well. And so we talked very candidly about, what we feel like our issues are, and how we're trying to make sure that we're listening to the community, and also looking at how we book business in the future for meetings and events. So I really encourage you to submit to fill out the survey. I'm happy to have conversation about this. I can share with you, certainly anything to this point, and would be more than happy to if there are process questions or anything like that that I can answer, I am happy to do so. Kimberly, the name of the magazine, well, Nature interviewed Claire and I. Convene magazine is the PCMA magazine that the forum discussion is going on in. But I would just say, it was exciting for us to have to try to convene the professional meeting community and really understand that AGU certainly is not the only group that is experiencing this kind of uncertainty in our environment, and trying to do the right thing. Because quite frankly, the first thing that we ask when we look at any location for any size meeting, first thing I ask, can I keep you safe while you're there? It's the first thing we ask. And the other thing that we ask, the very next question is, can I make you feel welcome? And all of the things that are going on in our country, especially in these 29 states, really are challenging our ability to do that. So we hear you. It's not that we are heartless and we don't care. There is none of that. There is a lot of discussion on this issue and a lot of angst on this issue. And these are deeply emotional, personal belief issues that we are trying to apply to organizational policy. And that is a hard thing to do, but we are going to do our very best.
Thanks, Lauren. Does anyone have questions?
Oh, what is the next year of the, oh, okay, so to which age you must commit. Okay, I can give you a couple of just kind of positioning in terms of where we are for booking. And right now, AGU is committed to Washington, D.C. in 2024, New Orleans in 25. This is for fall meeting. We are in San Francisco in 26. We are in Washington, D.C. in 27, San Diego, California in 28. 29 is an open year, and I can just share that we have 3 viable cities. Seattle, San Francisco, and Chicago are our choices right now. Everyone else is booked, but we're holding off to see what our meeting in Chicago looks like before we go out for bid. And then 2030 is New Orleans, 2031 Washington, D.C., 2032 is Los Angeles, 2033 New Orleans, 2034 Washington, D.C. So, and I can give you I can certainly print that. I think the other issue that all of you should be aware of is that we are also committed to New Orleans for ocean sciences in 2024. And we're committed to Dallas, Texas for the Triennial Earth and Sun Summit in 2024 as well. And that is directly in relation to the next eclipse, major eclipse event. That is why that meeting is positioned there. It is in the path of totality. So both AAS and AGU booked meetings directly in the path of totality. And we looked at a lot of weather data to be able to do that. And I will say that, you know, our discussions at AGU, I will just candidly say to you, are far more than the rights of pregnant persons. It really is also related to some of the other conversations going on in these states. For example, the Texas GOP recently saying their platform, the GOP platform there, recently saying that homosexuality is an abnormal lifestyle of choice and that transgender people should not be validated. You know what I mean? And that gives us great concern and great pause. So it's not just related to pregnant persons, it's also a little bit broader than that in terms of how we look at it. And Jeff, that meeting is the Triennial Earth and Sun Summit, and it is in April of 2024 in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, thank you. And Tanya, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Lauren and thank the meetings committee, because I know initially when the petition was put up, it, I think, felt like a demand on administration by the membership. And I really appreciate the way it has been allowed to become a conversation, which is what it really needs to be. And I appreciate the transparency. And I know there are a lot of considerations, and I thank you for doing that.
No, of course. And I think one of the things that AGU could do better is that we were having these conversations. We have been. I mean, I cannot tell you, I sat with a contract for Texas on my desk and I said, please, Texas, don't make me regret doing this. And this was a couple of years ago. And then, of course, this happens, right? So it is not, I mean, we are always having these conversations and we are always doing this, but we don't necessarily share that. So I really do appreciate the fact that people felt like, gosh, I didn't know that you convened a leadership summit with PCMA. I didn't know that you were talking to the state of Louisiana, you know, and all of these other cities. So the other thing too is, you know, we do meetings internationally and we have to think about how these policies translate internationally as well. So, so yeah, I do appreciate it, but I want to do whatever we can to demonstrate that we are thinking about these things. And if we didn't share that and people didn't know that, we can do better than share, you know, in the future.
Thanks. And there's a question in the chat from Kimberly about financials. So saying those are all financial commitments, question mark. So if AGU pulls out, would we likely lose a lot of money?
So it depends on the city. I mean, so yes, there are financial commitments where we have booked a contract. There is a financial commitment for us to come. And that is something that AGU does not take lightly. The other thing that kind of is happening in the community right now is that people are reaching out to other cities, like just to check, just to see if you've got space. Well, the cities all know, right? So it makes us, and we haven't done this. We have always said, if we reach out to a city to ask about space, we will do that transparently with our currently booked business so that no one is feeling like we're going behind someone's back, because in my opinion, that's unethical. It would be an unethical thing for me to do. So we are very transparent in that space. What I would say is those contracts, it depends on the state so of how close we are. So for example, in 2025 in New Orleans, it's not only our convention center contract that's signed, but it's also all of our hotel contracts that are signed too, right? At this stage, the whole package is together. So when we are not only canceling, if we were to cancel, we wouldn't just be canceling a convention center contract, we would be canceling millions of dollars in hotel contracts as well. Now, that's something that the board can consider, right? We can consider financial risk assessment across the board. In future years, so for example, in our Washington, D.C., well, no, Washington, D.C. is booked too, sorry. So in like 2030, our convention center contract is signed. Our hotel contracts have not come through yet because we're just starting to work on those. So I would tell you that the liability there is less. The big challenge with AGU and with bigger business, and we're actually having great conversations right now with the American Society of Hematology because they are of similar size to us and they are also December business. It's finding another place, right? So often when we are seeking a place, like I said about 2029, there are 3 cities that can hold us because of space, not because we're gigantic. I mean, we are, but there are only 3 cities that actually have room for us. And especially when you look at Washington, D.C., we hit that election cycle. So we have to kind of play off of that too, right? So many times, I mean, you would be surprised how far out business is booked. The other thing that has compressed this, honestly, is the pandemic. So the pandemic, everyone postponed their meetings. Lots of folks did. They postponed or canceled, and then they had to rebook business. And so there's all kinds of compression in the marketplace through 2026, where people have kind of rebooked. And that means that you know, space is much more limited. So we're also considering that as well. So for example, when we talk about what if, you know, what should we do for 2024 for the Ocean Sciences meeting? And again, that's not just AGU, that's ASLO and TOS as well. So those conversations are ongoing. What we're looking at is where would we go? And that meeting is, you know, less than 2 years away. And there's not another viable location right now. So that, again, like all of these things kind of play into it. So happy to, sorry, I'm gonna I don't mean to blither on about it, but just trying to make sure everybody understands and kind of has a more full picture. And again, I am more than happy to talk about this later. And John, I'm seeing you, 27 is Washington, D.C., 28 is actually San Diego. And John, the board adopted a rotation strategy a couple of years ago that wasn't just San Francisco, but with California. So we will try to rotate back to California as well as San Francisco, but making sure that we're kind of anchored in California. So much more diverse sites, yes. So San Diego, not a bad gig in December, you guys. I mean, that's a lot of sunshine for all of you. And then obviously Los Angeles has completely redone their downtown. They have a brand new center. It's pretty amazing. And before you roll your eyes and say Los Angeles, because I did that, when I went and saw it, I was really impressed by it and absolutely impressed by their sustainability and their public transportation now too. So lots of really good options that are coming on for us.
Great. And there's another question here from Jeff. Is the location information you provided about fall meeting 2026 and beyond private to council, or is it shareable?
It's shareable, and actually it'll be part of your packet, Jeff, that you're going to receive for council.
All right. Any other questions for Lauren?
And just thank you for the grace, and thank you for reaching out when you did have comments. I've gotten some really thoughtful comments via email, and all of those are shared as well. So if you don't feel like the survey really gets to what you want to share, please send it to us, because that is shared with the meetings committee, and you know, we will be transparent about that feedback as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. So are there any other questions or comments on anything right now, folks? Are we good for this meeting? All right, well, it's good to see everybody. Oh, go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Sorry, Lauren, I really appreciate all the info you gave, and I understand the difficulty, right? This is huge. My fear is, as I think I said in an email, if we say, you know, too late to change 2025, sorry, NOLA, that's okay. But if we say whatever the next one is, 2030, are we going to get, you know, blowback? You know, I think it's going to be interesting to message, you know, why we still have to have it there in 2030. So I don't have a suggestion, but just that's a concern.
And I can share, I'll share just some of the themes that came up at the meetings committee. So you know, this isn't to kind of defend that, but it is this discussion around, you know, when we made the decision to come out of San Francisco every year and regionally rotate the meeting, it was designed to pull more people in who may not be able to attend the meeting. And largely that has worked, whether that's been in Washington, D.C., whether that's been in New Orleans, that has worked. In the event that we are going to actually cancel something, I think that's something that the AG board is going to have to weigh in on. And also 2030 is, you know, 8 years away, right? 2033 even further. So we don't really know what the political stand is going to be then. And so we're kind of watching this entire environment kind of play out. I will share that we're also talking about things like, and this is again something that we don't share much of, so we can do better about sharing this. Contingency planning for people and to keep people safe. I cannot guarantee everyone's personal safety. It's an impossible task. But what I can do is I can guarantee that if someone is injured or ill at any meeting location, that we will move heaven and earth to get them out. And we have done that in the past. We have not shared the fact that we have had people who have been hit by cars and had to be evacuated to another country, medically evacuated to another country. We've done all of those things, and we have some of the best contingency and emergency plans in our industry, and we don't share that. So we do need to kind of share that. I don't think that that's an excuse to say, oh, if you don't feel good about coming here, I can help you. I don't think that that's fair. I think everyone needs to understand and make their own decision about where they feel like they are safe and where they feel like they want to spend their dollars in terms of whether they feel welcome. But I also think that we can do a better job of showing what our options are. If we leave, I think that that is something that the board is going to have to really consider carefully. Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Francisco are the most expensive cities in our nation for business meetings. And we've had people in the past say that they can't come because it's too expensive. So then do we get into this kind of like, how do we get something that fits everybody? And that's really hard to do. But I would tell you, I will just share candidly, yes, we're looking at the financial risk assessment. The financial assessment was not at all what we started with. It really wasn't. I mean, we will put the numbers together. We have been putting the numbers together, but we were far more concerned about people than we were kind of about talking about the dollars first. So I'll just say that. And you're right, Jeff, we have to figure out what makes sense in terms of, you know, now and in the future. And if other states, what happens when their political kind of orientations change, or they start to put in some of these really restrictive laws. And I will tell you that we do have a frustration of purpose clause that we require or we ask for, which means if you enact laws that are discriminatory in nature, we do have the right to leave. But a lot of states are starting to say, you know what, we won't sign those. Tough, we're not going to do it. Tennessee is a great example of that. Nashville, Indianapolis, like they won't sign those anymore because it's too much risk for them, right? So it's a conversation, as I guess is all I'm saying, and I want to be as transparent as I can, and we'll continue to be as transparent as we can be.
Yeah, I think the transparency is important. You know, people might freak out, so how do we message properly? So yeah, thank you very much.
Sure, of course. And thank you, Margaret, for your comment.
All right. Thank you so much, Lauren. We really appreciate it. Really important stuff. Does anyone have any other comments or questions on anything? Claire, do you have any? I saw you come off camera or come on camera, so I just wanted to check. You're good? Hi. All right, so with that, I'm going to let everyone go. Have a great rest of the day and weekend, and we'll see you next month at this meeting or probably before a council. So take care, everybody.